Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We begin in the name of the God whose mercy is profound, whose kindness is forever. We are trying to learn the language of the Quran, and we do it by repeating the concepts more and more so that we are able to get used to them. And obviously, it's all about practice. You talk about any language, if you want to master it, it really has to be a process of doing it over and over again. If you would kindly recall, we have as yet done the two Arabic forms cases of Rafa, nominative case, and Jar, genitive case. We have not touched upon, unless some very brief introduction of Nasab. We have not as yet talked about the Nasab Arabic form, which is the accusative. So let's start off with it. Nasab is the accusative case. I did not mention it before, as you would kindly recall, because I mentioned that when it comes to the question of Rafa or Jar, we have a limited number of possibilities. In Rafa there are 4, in Jar there are 2, wherein we talk about those examples, those categories, and we have done with the understanding of why nouns take Rafa and Jar forms. When it comes to Nasab, the possibility is much bigger. There are a far greater number of different reasons why a noun appearing in a sentence would take this accusative form, accusative case of Nasab. You don't have to be reminded of the appearance of Nasab. You already know that it's not very different from Jar, but just to recap, if we are talking about the example of the noun Alim, when it takes the form of Nasab, it would be Aliman or Al-Alima, Alimaini or Al-Alimaini, Alimina or Al-Alimina, Alimatan or Al-Alimata or Al-Alima, Alimataini or Al-Alimataini, and Alimatin or Al-Alimati. You've already done it. Now we are going to start talking about the different reasons why, when a noun appears in a sentence, it takes the Arabic form of Nasab, the accusative case. By far, the most important and the most frequently appearing reason for a Nasab, a noun to be in the form of Nasab, is what is called maf'ul, or it is also called maf'ul bihi, which is the object in a noun. When you have a sentence wherein you have a verb, you would invariably have a subject and an object. I say invariably because there are certain cases wherein you do not need a noun which is to take the position of the object. But in very many cases, most cases, it is what you do need. Going by the example we've already done, Daraba is a verb, and mind you, we've not started talking about verbs, but Daraba is a verb which we need to employ here because we are to talk about a Nasab now, and Zaidun is the subject, and Khalidan is the object. And Daraba is a verb. Because it's a subject, Zaid is taking the form of Rafa, and Khalidan is the one who was beaten up, is the one that has taken the position of an object, and therefore it is in the Nasab form. That is as simple as that. And as I said, that's the most frequently appearing reason for a noun to take the form of Nasab. We move a little further and we talk about another verb which by its nature is such that it does not desire, require the need for one object. Instead, it requires two objects. Such is the nature of certain nouns. So, for example, you say that Zad beat up Khalid, which is what we have done here. Zad is the subject and Khalid is the object, and beat up is the verb. In Arabic, Daraba, beat up, Zaidun Zaid, Khalidan Khalid. However, we do also have sentences where we say Zaid showed Khalid. What did he show him? The masjid. Now you have a case of sentence where Zaid, the subject, is in need of two nouns as objects because of the nature of the verb. He is showing somebody something. The somebody who is being shown is an object, object one, and what is he is being shown is object number two. So in Arabic, what we will do is that we will use the verb ara, which is showed. Who showed? Zaid. Whom? Khalid. What? Al-Masjid. So the Arab of Zaid would be obviously Zaidun. Ara, Zaidun. Zaid showed. Whom? Khalidan. That is the object. What? Al-Masjida. Masjid. So what I'm trying to show is that masjid, which is the second of the two objects in the sentence, is also going to take maf'ul, is also going to take nasab, the accusative case. This again is maf'ul bihi. It is called maf'ul bihi thani, the second object. Now, there's one thing more that I would want to introduce before I take a step further towards understanding whatever we have done as yet. And that is that remember that we talked about naib file, which was one of the concepts that we discussed, the subject of the passive. And we mentioned that naib file, the subject of the passive, whenever it appears, it is in the Arabic form of rafa, which is the nominative case. Now, naib file comes when there is a verb which is in the passive form. Normally, verbs appear in the active form. He beat up. But then obviously sometimes you also say he was beaten up. And we've already discussed that, when you are talking about passive verbs, you don't talk about the subject of the active verb. You talk about the object of the sentence wherein you have an active verb, and that object in a sentence where you have a passive verb used, it becomes naib file. It is actually a subject which is representing, the passive, which is subject of the passive. Now we move a step further, and we do this. The verb ara, he showed, has to now be made into a passive verb. And as I said, that when it comes to the passive verb, it is simple. It takes only one form appearance. Whether it's ara, whether it's zaraba, whether it's qatala. Zaraba would become zureba. Qatala, when it would be in the passive form, would be qutila. And ara would be in passive form uriya. So uriya was shown. Uriya was shown. Well, sounds a little strange, but obviously in Arabic the verb comes first. We don't talk about Zaid because Zaid is the subject of the sentence which has an active verb. The passive verb sentence would need Khalid, which is the naib fa'il, the subject of the passive, and it would be therefore in the form of Rafa. I hope you recall it because Rafa is something we've already talked about. I'm not saying that you would not forget, but what I'm saying is that it's a good idea that what you've already done should be there in your mind, and when we practice, we keep recapitulating and therefore reviving our memory and making it stronger. The reason why I am talking about it is that Uriya Khalidun is followed by Al-Masjid. Khalid was shown Masjid. This Masjid is going to again be Masjidah, Al-Masjidah. It's going to again take the form of Nasab. It's going to be accusative case. So what I'm saying is that when you talk about Nasab and you talk about Maf'ul Bihi would always take the form of Nasab, accusative case. Likewise, Maf'ul Bihi Sani, the second of the objects is also going to take the same form. And when it comes to the question of a sentence where you have a passive verb, the object of the active verb sentence is going to take the form of Arabi, form of Rafa. It would become nominative case, but the second object, the second of the two objects in the active verbs sentence, when it comes to the passive verb, the second object would continue to remain in the nasab form. In other words, it's going to be accusative case. And that's about it. You have covered the most important nasab as far as the frequency of appearance is concerned. Now what I am going to do is what shall I say is the fruit, is the end result, is the outcome, is what we expect from what we're trying to do. And that is an ability to appreciate and understand the Quranic text. I'm not saying, it's going to be asking for a little too much, that we understand everything that is there in the Quran on the basis of the very little that we have done. Well, what I'm trying to say is that, the idea of understanding the Quran through the Arabic that we have, the Arabic lessons that we learn, the only way out is to just plunge into it, practice it as much as you can. The more you practice, the more you will be able to master. And I tell you, one of the reasons why I am encouraging you to do it is that the only way you're going to learn Arabic is that you really get motivated. And the only motivation that we have is that we learn the Quran. You go into the Quran, you look at the some of the principles that we have already done and their application in the Quran. You look at the translation and you figure out as to whether you are identifying a few things that you've already learned and you are looking at them in the text the way they have been used and reconfirming what you've already learned. Well, it gives you confidence and it gives you a special kind of satisfaction, happiness. So I am going to now do, you might say this, it's overambitious, but why not? Let's try to do the most famous verse of the Quran, Ayatul Kursi. We start with Allahu La ilaha illa huwal hayy yul qayyum. Allah, there is no God, there is no deity except Him. He is living and the one who is sustaining everybody else. Now, what I'm trying to do is that let's look at what we have already done, which we find here mentioned, expressed. Allah is a noun and it has a rafa. obviously we have to figure out as to why. You know, Allah here is the starting point of the sentence. Anything else that has been mentioned in the sentence is actually the information that is being provided about Allah. So Allah is the mubtada, the what we call inquisitive, the starter, the beginner. And the rest is the khabar, which is the enunciative, which is the information. It is not exactly in the same manner, the khabar, that we are used to, because we know that khabar is also in the form of rafa, but khabar is in rafa form when it is in the form of a simple noun. Here, obviously, it's a pretty longish expression, but the one thing that we know is, and which really should give us some feeling of comfort, is that Allah is rafa, and we know that because it's mubtada, it's inquisitive. We move on. La ilaha illahu. You know, it's important that we we also know what we don't know, because once we are able to figure out as to why there are certain things that we don't know, we will have them there in our mind, and we look for answers to the question as to why there's certain noun whose Arab we don't understand. So la ilaha, ilaha is most certainly in the form of nasab. We don't know exactly why it's in the form of nasab. And mind you, there's a question that there should be a question in your mind. Ilah is a noun in the form of nasab, and it is taking one harakat, one symbol. It's not in tanmeen, despite it not having an alif lam before it. Allah is obviously the alif lam. Allah is ilahun preceded by alif lam. Because of the use of it over a period of time, obviously it's one of the most frequently used words in Arabic. It became from al-ilah to Allah. But ilah, which is the common noun, without an alif lam, is coming in the form of nasab with only one harakat. Just keep in mind. Huwa al-hayyul qayyum. This is a pronoun. We have not as yet talked about pronouns, and these are the nouns. Both are in the form of rafa. Huwa, he is al-hayy, living, al-qayyum, sustaining. You know, as yet we don't know this pronoun, but we most certainly know that these two nouns are in the form of rafa. And if you look at the sentence, the simple translation of the sentence, huwa al-hayyul qayyum, he is the living, the sustaining, the one who is causing everybody else to live, to sustain. This obviously is the khabar. It's the information about huwa, and it is the enunciative. That is, he, Allah, he is the one who is living, he is the one who is al-qayyum, the sustaining. And this is the khabar. Obviously, you need to have this question in mind, and I'm not going to answer it right now. Why is it that despite it being khabar, it is taking alif lam? It's not common noun, it's proper noun. Proper noun, by the way, is called marifa, and common noun is called nakira. So why is al-hayy and al-qayyum not nakira, which is the common noun? Instead, it's marifa. Why is it marifa? Because it's taking alif lam before the word begins. Well, what it means is, therefore, that the rule that the mubtada is going to be in the form of proper noun, it has to be marifa, and the khabar has to be in the form of common noun, nakira, is not a rule which always applies. There are exceptions, right? So we move on. Allahu la ilaha illahu al-hayyul qayyum. The next part of the famous verse is La ta'khuzuhu. La ta'khuzuhu sanatun wala naum. Now, you know, we've not done these type of verbs, but by the very translation you would know by going through it that it's another verb. La ta'khuzuhu, he is not overcome by. Who again is a pronoun like huwa is a pronoun. We talk about pronoun later. But right now, la ta'khuzuhu, it does not, he is not overtaken by, he is not overwhelmed, overcome by sinatum wala naum. Neither sleep nor slumber, any form of doze. Now, both these words are in the form of rafa. And obviously, the nominative case has to be justified. And I hope that you have almost reached at the reason. It's because ta'khuzuhu overcomes or doesn't overcome is a verb, and these are both the doers of that verb. These are both files of the verb, and that is why they are taking this form. We know that file is subject. Whenever you have a verb, it has to have a subject. And when subject appears, sometimes it would not appear. It would be implied. But when it appears in the text, it has always got to take the form of Arab, of Rafa. It has always got to be, in other words, in nominative case. La ta'khuzuhu sinatun wala nawm. Lahu, for him, ma, whatever is, fis samawati, wal ard. For him, lam is actually one of the particles, hurufe. It's harkat, which is hurufe jar, one of the harfe jar. But here it's not causing the kind of change which hurufe jar cause by giving the immediately succeeding noun, the harkat of the Arab of jar. Why? We'll talk about it later. As I said, to know that you don't know certain things in itself really an important part of learning. Ma, whatever, fis samawat, actually whatever is in the heavens. Now fi, if you would recall, is one of the particles, one of the huruf jar, which means in. Whatever is there in the heavens, and therefore as-samawat has taken jar. It has one symbol of jar and not two because it's preceded by as-samawat. You notice that as-samawat is not actually giving you the sound of al, but wal ard is giving you the sound of al. This is because there are two types of letters in Arabic. There are some which are shamsi and there are others which are called qamari. Shamsi letters, huruf, are the ones which when they are preceded by alif lam, the alif lam, the lam is silent. So you would say ash-shams, not al-shams. But when it comes to qamari huruf letters, when a word beginning by a qamari harf, a qamari alphabet is preceded by alif lam, then you bring out the sound of lam, like al-qamar or like al-ard. How do we know? Well, it's there in Arabic, already known. It's in the tradition, the convention of the Arabs. Lahu ma fis samawati wal ard. Lahu ma fis samawati wa ma fil ard. Oh. Everybody remembers Ayatul Kursi. I can't get it wrong. Lahu ma fis samawati wa ma fil ard. So this fi is repeated here, and al-ard obviously is going to take a jar again because fi is a harf jar, and there is only one because of alif lam. Man zal lazi. Who is there? Man zal lazi. Who is there? Yashfa'u, that can intercede. Indahu, before him. Now, man, we have not discussed it. Zallazi, we don't know very much about it. Yashfa'u is a verb, intercedes or shall intercede. Indahu, before him. The only thing is that this inda, which is a noun, has a nasab at the top of it. We need to figure out later why this nasab appears when it comes to inda. And why is it 1 and not 2, despite the fact that inda is not preceded by alif lam? Man zal ladhi yashfa'u indahu illa, except. You know, there are certain words which are repeated so many times, so often, that you would know their meanings. Illa is one of them. Illa bi izni, except by his leave, his will. Now, this bi is one of the huruf jar, and it has actually given jar to izn. So this iznihi, this jar is because of bi. Now the question is, why does it have one harakat and not two? You know why? Because it is mudaf. Now mudaf of what? Mudaf of he. Izn means sanction. Iznihi means his sanction. Zaid's house, his sanction. Again the same, mudaf ilayh, wherein we talked about the fact that, it's the case of the possessive case. There is an apostrophe, and we are talking about governing noun and the governed noun. And bi-iznihi is, this is jar, but only one harakat. Yashfa'u indahu illa bi-izni. Ya'lamu, he knows. Again a verb. Ma bayna, whatever is in between aydihim, their hands, that is before them, right in front of them, وَمَا خَلْفَهُمْ, and what is behind them. يَعْلَمُ مَا بَيْنَ أَيْدِيهِمْ وَمَا خَلْفَهُمْ. Here, again, this ID is there, and Baina is there. Okay, I would say that as yet we don't know much about it, although some of you might try to figure it out. I'll just leave it up to you. وَمَا خَلْفَهُمْ. Khalfa again is a noun which has come with a nasab, and we've not as yet talked about the reason for it, but it has one harakat, which is again because it is mudaf. It's mudaf, and as I said, mudaf is always with one harakat, despite it not having an alif lam before it, and it's the governing noun. وَمَا خَلْفَهُمْ وَلَا يُحِيطُونَ. وَلَا يُحِيطُونَ, and they cannot take charge of or lay hands on or embrace بِشَيْءٍ, anything. Now this yuhituna is noun or is a verb. We can't do anything about it. We don't know much about it. But bishay'in, be has given shay jar. Wala yuhituna bishay'in. It's a jar because of be. Min ilmihi. Wala yuhituna bishay'in min ilmihi. They cannot possess, take anything min ilmihi, from his knowledge. Ilmihi. Now this again, ilm is getting a jar because of min, and one because of it being mudaf. Illa, except, bima sha'a, except for what he would desire, he would permit. Now be again is a harf jar, is not giving ma any jar. Why? There's something we're going to talk about later. In the next session, inshallah, we'll start from where we had left in this Ayatul Kursi, and we'll complete it, and we'll then proceed further. May the Almighty enable us to understand His book as best as we can.